Going back all the way to the very first season of Formula 1 all the way back in 1950, the legendary Juan Manuel Fangio would take his first ever Drivers' Championship while driving an Alfa Romeo 158. He'd also continue on to win a second world title with Alfa Romeo before the team withdrew from Formula 1. They wouldn't be seen again until 1978, where they competed in 7 more seasons with a 6th place finish being the highest result. 2019 would see another comeback for the Alfa Romeo name after partnering with Sauber, before the team was converted to the state-kick Sauber F1 team for the 2024 season. Now with that team becoming Audi next year, could Alfa Romeo return with their own team to try and combat their old partners? So I loaded up F125 MyTeam and simulated through the next 10 seasons to see how they would perform, using the driver lineup of Juan Manuel Correa alongside Franco Colapinto for the very first season. But before we get into the video, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and you can also join as a channel member to show your support. What would be the 2025 Formula 1 season ends the way that many would expect. McLaren taking the Constructors' Championship with Red Bull and Ferrari finishing behind. Alfa Romeo's return season does end in tragedy, scoring low points and finishing at the very bottom of the Constructors' standings. Both drivers would finish at the bottom of the Drivers' standings as well, with Colapinto beating his teammate to a P21 finish. Oscar Piastri will once again be underrated on this game as he finishes in 4th place, behind the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc, just 15 points ahead. The title fight is unsurprisingly between Norris and Verstappen, with the McLaren driver actually falling incredibly short, finishing over 100 points behind in P2. This means that Verstappen continues his dominance to secure another driver's title, taking a total of 10 race wins along the way. Lando Norris would only be able to win 3 times, with Charles Leclerc winning twice and Oscar Piastri only winning once. Now another huge first season driver transfer market, starting with the retirement of world champions Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, with seats opening up at both Aston Martin and Ferrari. Aston Martin fill that void by signing Franco Colapinto away from Alfa Romeo, with the new team bringing Gabriel Bortoleto over from their old partners of Sauber. The open seat at Ferrari is filled by Kimi Antonelli, with Carlos Sainz moving over to Mercedes, while Liam Lawson is set to move to Williams. The reigning champion Max Verstappen is dropped by the Red Bull team as they bring in runner-up Lando Norris, who is then replaced by the other Red Bull driver of Yuki Tsunoda. Red Bull will then sign Esteban Ocon to partner Norris, with Paul Aron being set to make his debut at Haas. Correa is dropped by Alfa Romeo with Jack Doohan making the switch, while Zane Melody is brought in by Alpine for his debut. The other debuting drivers are Zach O'Sullivan for Kick Sauber and Pepe Marti signing for the Racing Bulls. But also both the aerodynamics and powertrain departments are set to be hit with some regulation changes as we head into Season 2. Those regulation changes would have an effect on the top of the constructor standings, with the reigning champions McLaren falling to 3rd place after being overtaken by Red Bull and the Ferrari team, who rise to the top to win the title in Season 2. Alfa Romeo makes slight improvements to score a single point, but will still find themselves sat in P11 behind the Racing Bulls. Now Jack Doohan does pick up where Correa left off down in P22, but Gabriel Bortoleto finds the team's first points and finishes in P20, just ahead of Pepe Marti. Now with Max Verstappen out of Formula 1 this year, the top 3 does see some differences, with Oscar Piastri moving into the top 3 as he finishes in 3rd place. He finishes just behind the new Red Bull driver as Lando Norris once again finishes as the runner-up, this time behind a new champion, as Charles Leclerc scores 269 points to take his Ferrari to the very top. The title fight was much closer this season, with only 17 points separating the top 2, after Leclerc's 6 wins just outscored Lando after he won 5. Piastri would pick up another 4 race wins this season, with Carlos Sainz returning to the top step of the podium, but his first with Mercedes. The runner-up Lando Norris is dropped by the Red Bull team after he fails to secure the championship, with his replacement being none other than Max Verstappen. He returns to the Red Bull team in hopes of winning yet another Drivers' Championship. Now quite a few drivers do swap teams, starting with Jack Doohan leaving Alfa Romeo, with Kimi Antonelli coming in, joining from Ferrari. This allows the recent race winner Carlos Sainz to return to Ferrari and partner Leclerc again, with Albon making the jump over to Mercedes. He is then replaced at Williams by Oliver Behrman, with Jack Doohan remaining in Formula 1 after he secured a drive with Haas for next year. Now the powertrain department is targeted once again with some more regulation changes for the 3rd season. The 3rd season provides a 3rd different champion, as Ferrari dropped to runners-up, being overtaken by Mercedes, who returned to the very top for the first time since 2021. The Alfa Romeo team make major improvements, moving up to P7 after scoring 29 points, mostly were from the new signing of Kimi Antonelli, who picked up 26 and finished in P10, with Bortoleto scoring a few points himself to finish in P15. Last season's champion Charles Leclerc can only manage to finish in 3rd place this season, failing to secure back-to-back titles. With Lando Norris gone, a new runner-up is crowned. This time, George Russell takes his Mercedes to 2nd place. This opens the door for Max Verstappen to once again take the crown on his return to Formula 1 and Red Bull Racing. Now only 14 points would separate Russell and Verstappen, with both drivers managing to secure 4 race wins, much like 3rd place Charles Leclerc. Oscar Piastri continues to secure race wins, adding another 3 to his tally, with the newest race winner Alex Albon etching his name into history. He could continue to make history as Albon moves back to Red Bull after Max Verstappen once again becomes a free agent. Yuki Tsunoda moves over from McLaren to Mercedes, with Lando Norris being brought back in to drive for McLaren next year. Now Nico Hülkenberg is set to retire at the end of this season, with Victor Martins coming in at Caulz, while Lance Stroll leaves Aston Martin, Isaac Hadjar takes his seat, and Jack Crawford will join the Racing Bulls for his first year in Formula 1. The aerodynamics department will then be hit with some changes for the second time, this year in partnership with the chassis department. Now despite the regulation changes, the Silver Arrows would add another title to their history, after winning their second consecutive Constructors title, leading McLaren, who overtake Ferrari to take the runner-up spot. Alfa Romeo continues to make major improvements and jump up to P5 this season, overtaking both Williams and Alpine. They will still have one driver in P10, but this time it's Bortoleto who makes his own improvements, with Kimi Antonelli finishing just ahead in P9. Last season's third place Charles Leclerc falls down to P4 this season, being overtaken by the newest Mercedes driver of Yuki Tsunoda. Lando Norris on his return season takes his McLaren car to second place, but will fall just short of a brand new champion as George Russell manages to score the most points to win his first ever Drivers' Championship. He did have a very strong season though after he took a total of 6 race wins, with runner-up Lando Norris winning a total of 4 times. Yuki Tsunoda wins his first ever Formula 1 race, with Leclerc winning twice and Kimi Antonelli also winning his first F1 race, but also marking Alfa Romeo's first race win since 1951. Now the only driver to lose their seat this year would be Pierre Gasly, who leaves Alpine, with Zach O'Sullivan being signed as his replacement, while Taylor Barnard is introduced into Formula 1 to drive for Caulz. Now only some small regulation changes, as the durability departments are the only ones being affected. Mercedes have a terrible season and drop down to P4, with the McLaren team returns to the very top, just ahead of Alfa Romeo, who make their own improvements to finish just 34 points behind the champions. Gabriel Bortoleto continues to make his improvements to move up from P10 to P7 this season, with his teammate Kimi Antonelli also making his own remarkable improvements. Last season's champion George Russell could only secure a third place finish this season, beating Charles Leclerc, who does remain in P4. The runner-up spot this year is then taken by a new face, while driving for the new and improved Alfa Romeo team, as Kimi Antonelli takes his car just 30 points short of the brand new world champion. We will finally see Lando Norris take his first Drivers' Championship, still in a McLaren after his unsuccessful venture to Red Bull. Now both the champion and the runner-up would end the season on 6 race wins each, while both the former champion George Russell and the other Alfa Romeo driver Gabriel Bortoleto both winning 2 races each. A few more driver moves than last season, with the Ferrari driver of Carlos Sainz set to retire, with Pierre Gasly returns to Formula 1 to drive for the Scarlet team. Race winner Gabriel Bortoleto couldn't quite come to an agreement with Alfa Romeo and will lose his Formula 1 seat, with the former champion George Russell being brought in as his replacement. The reigning champion Lando Norris leaves his title-winning team to drive for Mercedes, while another former champion Max Verstappen returns to drive for McLaren. Alongside all these moves, some major regulation changes are being brought in, and these will affect the aerodynamics, chassis and durability departments. The regulation changes did have a significant impact on the constructor standings, with former champs McLaren dropping down to P2, last year's runners-up Alfa Romeo dropping down to P6, and Mercedes jumping up from P4 to win another Constructors' Championship. Last season's third place driver George Russell doesn't impress on his move to Alfa Romeo, but neither does Kimi Antonelli, as both drivers fall to finish in P9 and P10 after those major regulation changes. One driver who will take advantage of this would be Charles Leclerc, as the former champion makes his way back up into the top 3, sitting just behind a brand new face as the Red Bull driver Esteban Ocon takes the runner-up position. But this does allow for the reigning champion Lando Norris to take another Drivers' Championship, this time driving for Mercedes rather than McLaren. Now there wasn't much competition this year, as Lando Norris would take 8 race wins on his way to scoring almost 100 points more than Esteban Ocon, who would only be able to win twice. Charles Leclerc finished just 2 points behind Ocon despite an extra race win, with Verstappen also winning twice, but Oliver Behrman takes his Williams to take his first ever race win. Oliver Behrman will however leave Williams at the end of the season after he makes a move to Alfa Romeo, with Kimi Antonelli unfortunately leaving Formula 1. Season 2's champion Charles Leclerc is set to retire at the end of Season 6, with Oscar Piastri moving over to Ferrari. An open seat at McLaren will be provided for Franco Colapinto, with Albon moving to Aston Martin and Max Verstappen returns to his home team of Red Bull. Zach O'Sullivan joins McLaren and Jack Crawford moves over to Alpine. Now the last 2 seats are at Williams, who bring back Gabriel Bortoleto, and the Racing Bulls, who will bring Richard Verschoor into Formula 1. Now once again some more regulation changes, with both the aerodynamics and the chassis departments getting hit for the 2nd year in a row. The Constructors' Championship will once again see some changes, with Mercedes dropping down to P2 and Red Bull scoring the most points to win their first Constructors' title of the simulation in Season 7. The Alfa Romeo team managed to recover some pace and move up to 3rd in the standings. Behrman manages to take a P6 finish in his debut season with Alfa Romeo, while his teammate George Russell makes some major improvements to move up to 3rd place after finishing in P10 last season. Max Verstappen does have a strong homecoming season to take his Red Bull to P2, but cannot quite match the success of reigning champion Lando Norris, who is able to take a 3rd Drivers' Championship in a row. Now just over 20 points would separate the top two, with 2 race wins also separating the pair, as Norris took 6 race wins while Verstappen could only take 4. Both Alfa Romeo drivers were able to take 2 race wins each, with Esteban Ocon securing a win and Oscar Piastri taking his first race win at Ferrari. Now no drivers will leave the sport this year, but we will see George Russell leaving Alfa Romeo and he'll just disappear for now. The boy from Barbados, Zane Maloney, is brought in by the Alfa Romeo team, with Isaac Hadjar moving over to join Alpine. The open seat at Aston Martin is then given to Liam Lawson. Yuki Tsunoda moves over to Williams, allowing George Russell to return to his title-winning team of Mercedes. Now the chassis department is then once again targeted for the 3rd time, this season alongside the powertrain department, which hasn't seen its own changes in about 5 years. Now after a very close title fight, the reigning champions of Red Bull will fall just 28 points short of retaining their title, as Mercedes managed to overcome the challenges to return to the very top. Alfa Romeo remain in 3rd place this year, but can't quite match their performances from last year, with Oliver Behrman remaining in P6, while the newest driver Zane Maloney doesn't quite match George Russell's performances and ends in P7. George Russell himself though would remain in 3rd place upon his return to Mercedes, finishing just behind his new teammate and the reigning champion of Lando Norris, who is unsuccessful in winning the title 4 years in a row. Instead, we would see Max Verstappen once again return to the very top of the standings and winning his first title since back in Season 3. Now despite only winning by 29 points, Verstappen would score double the race wins of his rival Lando Norris, as Max would win 8 times, but Norris would only win on 4 occasions. George Russell managed a total of 3 race wins on his Mercedes return, with Franco Colapinto also managing to step on the top step for the very first time. Now Esteban Ocon just missed out on the top 3, and couldn't quite help his team to win another title, and has now decided to retire from Formula 1 just before the penultimate season. Gabriel Bortoleto moves over to the Red Bull team, with Franco Colapinto returning to drive for Williams. Oscar Piastri moves over to McLaren after a lackluster season at Ferrari, with Zane Maloney moving over to that open seat. The former 3-time champion Lando Norris moves over to Alfa Romeo after just missing out on the title, with Mercedes providing another homecoming for Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Jack Doohan is then dropped by Haas in favour of Victor Martins, with Joshua Dirksen coming in for his debut at Kick Sauber. And then for the 4th season in a row, the chassis department will then be hit by regulation changes just before Season 9. Even the smallest of regulation changes can cause a shake-up in the standings, with Mercedes dropping back to runners-up, while Red Bull once again top the Constructors' Championship to win another title. McLaren do make some improvements to take 3rd place, overtaking Alfa Romeo, who will end up in P4. Lando Norris doesn't quite bring his championship winning skills to Alfa Romeo and can only finish in P9 with his new team, while his teammate Oliver Behrman drops just a place to finish in P7. The newest Red Bull driver of Gabriel Bortoleto has a very strong first season with the team and manages to finish in 3rd place just ahead of Kimi Antonelli on his return. The runner-up this season will be the McLaren driver of Oscar Piastri, who also has a very strong first season back with his first team. Only 5 points would separate Piastri and the champion, as Max Verstappen once again takes the crown to secure back-to-back championships. Now despite how close it seemed, Max Verstappen would be the dominant driver to secure 5 race wins, with Kimi Antonelli being the driver with the 2nd most wins after he took 4. Bortoleto would take 3 race wins with his 3rd place finish, with runner-up Piastri taking just 2. Lando Norris does manage a race win despite his fairly poor season, with the McLaren driver of Zach O'Sullivan also taking his first ever win to round out the season. Now just one driver move heading into the final season, with Victor Martins being replaced at Haas by Formula 3 icon Tim Tramnitz, with both the powertrain and durability departments also being hit with regulation changes as we head into the final year. But as we see, once again the top of the standings see small changes, with Mercedes and Red Bull swapping places again, much like the Alfa Romeo and McLaren teams for 3rd and 4th. Ferrari do jump up to P6 after an abysmal season last year where they finished down in 8th place. Oliver Behrman becomes the new Mr. Consistency and takes another P7 finish, while Lando Norris shows his talent to drag his Alfa Romeo car up to a 3rd place finish. The reigning champion of Max Verstappen just misses out on yet another championship win by just 13 points, as a brand new champion rounds out the simulation on top. This new champion would be Andrea Kimi Antonelli, taking his Mercedes to the very top for the very first time, in major contrast to how every other F1 25 simulation has ended up to now. Max Verstappen would end the season with the most wins after he did manage 5, with both the champion Antonelli and Alfa Romeo's Lando Norris taking 3 race wins each. Both Oscar Piastri and Gabriel Bortoleto would manage to take 2 race wins each, while George Russell ends the simulation with just a single race win. And that is 10 seasons simulated with the return of the Alfa Romeo team. Now a lot of people did suggest this, so hopefully it lived up to the expectations. Now let's have a look at the 10 seasons as a whole and see who the standout performers were. There were 4 different teams able to win the Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari only managing to win 1. Both the McLaren and Red Bull teams were able to win twice, with Mercedes being the most dominant team after winning the championship in 5 out of the 10 seasons. There would be 5 different drivers who would win the World Drivers' Championship, with George Russell, Charles Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli all winning their first and only world titles during this simulation. Lando Norris would manage to take 3 titles on the bounce, while Max Verstappen adds 4 titles to his already impressive resume and ends the season as the first and only 8-time Formula 1 world champion. Now across the 160 races, 14 different drivers took the checkered flag first, with Zach O'Sullivan, Franco Colapinto, Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon all winning just 1 race each, whereas Yuki Tsunoda, Oliver Behrman and Esteban Ocon would manage to win on 3 occasions. Gabriel Bortoleto ended with a total of 7 race wins, with Piastri adding 13 to his tally and Antonelli taking his to 14. Charles Leclerc managed 17 race wins, George Russell with 18, then a huge jump up to Max Verstappen who won a total of 38 times. Now he would end just 2 wins shy of Lando Norris who took 40 wins as we round out the end of this simulation. But that is going to wrap up another video on F1 25, and if you enjoyed, make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, as we're literally so close to 10k, and possibly have already hit that by the time you're watching this video. Links in the description will include the link for the ALFA ROMEO mod, as well as all my social media pages, including my Discord server, which is the best way to receive updates about uploads for this channel. But that's going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.